Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, what is incredible is as the media is engaging, and I pointed this out on X last night, this fawning, sycophantic, non-stop coverage of the death of Pope Francis, which honestly to me at this point is bordering on propaganda. It really is. It just doesn't stop. And it's the constant BS and the constant lies. And, I mean, look, I get it. He's dead. He was beloved by some in the church. Clearly, he was opposed by many within the church as well. But instead of being balanced about it and being adults about it and having a mature, serious, retrospective look at his life and his legacy, I mean, they're trying to turn this guy into a saint. They're making him seem like he's the second coming of Jesus. Really, honestly. Okay, but let that go. Let that go. I don't like to speak ill of the dead. Let it go. Okay, let it go. My point is, as the media is flooding the airwaves with constant talk about the death of Pope Francis, what is now underneath the radar is that the left in state after state after state is now declaring war on parental rights, parental authority, the autonomy and independence of the family, and in particular, they are now making a claim on our children. And it's not just Massachusetts, although, again, Massachusetts, like so often, is an epicenter. But we're talking California, we're talking New York, we're talking Connecticut, Maine, Illinois, Minnesota. It is a movement now that is growing across the country, especially in blue states. Now, let me give you two examples. Okay, there's more, but let me just give you two examples. One, there is now a big push by lawmakers at the state level. In fact, it is already law in California, in New York, in Connecticut, in Maine, and now here in Massachusetts. The Democrats are aggressively pushing a bill following those states that would remove all religious exemptions from parents who don't want their children to get the school mandated vaccinations. So, say you don't want your child to get all of those vaccinations, and you say on religious grounds, on conscience grounds, I don't want my children to be loaded up with all of these vaccines, which, by the way, is your right as a parent. Well, what do you think they've done in all these other blue states, and that Massachusetts is now trying to follow with this bill? They have now made it impossible to declare a religious exemption. They have banned religious exemptions on issues like school-mandated vaccinations for your children. And what I mean by children, I'm talking all the way up to the age of 17. Now, what are you going to say? Jeff, what does this mean in reality, Jeff? In reality, here's what it means. Children now are barred, banned, prohibited if they come from families that refuse to vaccinate their kids. They cannot attend any public or private schools K to 12. They can't go to a daycare. They can't go to kindergarten. They can't go to elementary school, middle school, high school, public or private. They are not allowed. Now, this is already law. I want to repeat this in many states. Massachusetts now is trying to add their mass to this list of this growing movement to get rid of religious exemptions when it comes to the vaccination of your own children. Now, what happened to my body, my choice? Or in this case, Whose children are they? Do they belong to the parents? Are they the ultimate responsibility of the parents? Or do they belong to the state and to the government? What Democrats are now saying is that it's not your child. It's the government's child. And if you don't abide by their strict vaccination regimen, which, by the way, now, in some states and here in Mass, they're trying to make a push. Okay? But it's in other states as well. Includes the COVID-19 jab. If you don't want your child to have a COVID-19 jab, they will prevent you from sending your child to a public or private school. That's none of the government's business. Now, you're saying, well, Jeff, it may pose a threat to people's health. No, it's not. If your child is immunized, say, against the measles, there's a measles outbreak now in Texas. Okay, it's all, the media is trying to blame Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for it. Okay, which is, by the way, there are always measles outbreaks, but let that one go. Okay, leave that aside. If your child is vaccinated against the measles, your child is vaccinated against the measles. What are you worried about? So how does this affect your child? It doesn't. So you're trying to force parents to do something against their children that they don't believe is in the best interest of their child and that probably violates their fundamental religious beliefs. Now, how is this right? Seriously, how is this right? We just celebrated the 250th anniversary of Concord and Lexington. Paul Revere's famous ride. Warning, tyranny's at the door. The British are coming. The British are coming. And now, instead of the crown, the state, the government has the right to claim our children as their property? That they own above the parent, that it supersedes parental rights and parental authority? Are these people mad? Now, let me give you another example. And then I want to open up the phone line, 617-266-6868. This is now also in many blue states. It's almost two. Now it's over a dozen. Again, Massachusetts is pushing a bill to catch up with California and Minnesota and Colorado and New York and Illinois and Connecticut. I could go on, and Washington and Oregon. So listen now to this. Here's what's coming. This is what's coming. This is already in many blue states, and it's coming here again, Massachusetts. They now want to pass a bill, and they've already passed bills that literally crushes and destroys parental consent for your child. And by the way, it doesn't matter what developmental level your child is. Say your child is special needs and maybe doesn't quite understand what is being asked of him or her. It doesn't matter. Ages 5 to 17. Your child can agree to be vaccinated at the school, get full school mandated vaccinations and sterilization. They can be sterilized. Let's say they want to start a transgender transitioning process, take puberty blockers or hormones or whatever, which, by the way, leads to sterilization. You can never have children again. Without the parents' consent or even knowledge. Or even knowledge that the parents have no right to know. If their child say it's Jimmy is saying he's Jenny, or Jenny is saying she's Jimmy. A boy says she's a girl, or a boy says he's a girl says she's a boy, and they want to start this transgender transitioning. Well, sterilize them, give them puberty blockers, pump them up with all these hormones, and if they the parents do not have to consent. The parents don't even have to know. So your child can be sterilized behind your back. Your child can be vaccinated behind your back. This is already happening in many states. They want to drive it here now and pass it in Massachusetts. Now, as I said yesterday on X, and I want to repeat it, this is state coercion at its very worst. This is literally the definition of fascism. This is communism. You have no rights over your child, increasingly, and your child is now seen as the property of the government, who now's authority supersedes that of you, the parents, and that of the family. And so I am going to fight this with everything that I have. This demonic, diabolical, anti-parent, anti-family, anti-human, anti-child movement must be stopped and reversed immediately. Okay, and now in a growing number of states, I mentioned them already: California, New York, Connecticut, Maine. That's just for starters. Massachusetts now is pushing. Democrats are pushing a bill very aggressively. They have the votes. If we don't stop them, they have the votes. So we have the issue. We have the moral high ground. We have the truth. But they work in the shadows. And so they need to be exposed. And many Americans are not even aware of this. That in multiple states, and now potentially here in Massachusetts, they now want to make it illegal. They want to abolish or get rid of religious exemptions for all children or all students under the age of 18. And if you, as the parents, decide you don't want your child to be vaccinated, then they will bar your child, literally ban your child, prohibit your child from going to kindergarten, daycare, elementary, middle, high school, public or private, all K-12 schools. Now, let me ask all of you the first question. And I think we need to have an honest debate about this. And if you disagree with me, please, I want to hear all points of view. 617-266-6868. Should schools be allowed to ban or prohibit students who are not fully vaccinated, who don't have the full regimen of vaccines? That's number one. And in particular, should state governments, should the government be allowed essentially to force you to vaccinate your child? And if you don't, your child then is not allowed to go to any public or private school until at least college. And in many cases, they're not even going to prevent them from going to college. To me, this is fascism. This is communism. It's ultimately the child is the responsibility of the parents. It's not the government. Your child is, my children are not owned by the government. The government's authority does not supersede that of Grace and I, as an example. I am Ashton's father. I am Ava's father. Grace is Ava's mother and Ashton's father. We have ultimate authority and responsibility over our children. Not Maura Healey, not Michelle Wu, I don't care who the governor is. Now, let me add one final quick log on the fire, because this is now also law. It's in Minnesota, it's in Colorado, it's in California, it's state. They're falling like dominoes, and it's coming now to Massachusetts as well. Which is, there's another, in fact, two bills that they're pushing now in the Massachusetts legislature. It's already been passed in other states. So this is gaining momentum. Now, there is an effort by Democrats, and they really are communists. To me, this is full-blown communism, whereby they want to abolish parental consent. All parental consent when it comes to your child or people's children, again, with no distinctions whatsoever. Say you have a child that is, very severely autistic. I'm just going to use an example. It doesn't matter. If they can talk your child into getting, say, a regimen of vaccinations that you don't believe is good for your child, or that your child is, say, maybe biologically a girl or a female, they convince is a male or non-binary, or vice versa, they could have them start to take hormone blockers and sterilization without the parents' knowledge or consent, literally behind your back. This is, to me, beyond outrageous. It is beyond sickening. It is, to me, as I said, this is demonic and diabolical. Well, this is Tim Walz's Minnesota. This is Kathy Hochul's New York. This is Pritzker's Illinois. This is Gavin Newsom's California. And very soon, if we don't speak out and nip this in the bud, it will be Healy's, Massachusetts. Now, again, I'm sorry, but I have ultimate decision over whether my child, and again, this is 5 years old to 17. So what, you're going to convince an 8, 9, 10-year-old child that they're, some kind of transgender and they should get pumped up on these hormones or these sterilization drugs and never be able to have children again? And I get no say? And my wife gets no say? Are you kidding me? I want to take calls, but I want to ask all of you, is it not time for a rally? If we are not going to defend our children and our grandchildren, then my God, what have we come to as a country and as a society? And that's why in 2 days, on April 24th, there will be a massive rally at the steps of the State House. I will be speaking. I will be emceeing. It is sponsored by American Made Action. It will be at the State House in front of the Boston Commons. Kuhner country, if you love your children, if you love your grandchildren, show up and tell them no. Okay, just two super quick points because the lines are jammed and I want to go to the phone lines. Number one, many of you are texting and emailing the Kuhner Man. And by the way, you can text us 70470. Jeff, does this include the COVID-19 jab? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So they're basically telling you now you're going to, now it's not every state. Some states are making exceptions for the COVID-19 jab. You don't have to force your child to take it. But there are many states now, and these bills in Massachusetts, there's 3 of them, would require the COVID-19 jab for your child. So again, it's on a case-by-case, state-by-state basis. Now, I'm sorry, Ashton has never gotten the COVID-19 jab. Ava's never gotten the COVID-19 jab. By the way, they don't need it. First of all, COVID is over. 1. 2, children had a very strong immunity to COVID-19. This is indisputable. It's indisputable. So why are you forcing it on kids? Especially when take young males, ages 18 to 29, even let's say 30, 31, you have a lot of cases of myocarditis as a side effect, where they're getting heart attacks, strokes, enlarged hearts. So again, follow the money. For me, it's obviously a philosophical issue. This is none of the government's business, period. Okay, I see it as a pro-family, pro-parent rights issue. But under driving all this, just follow the money. Now, they want everybody jabbed to the hilt because Big Pharma is buying off, they've bought off many Republicans, don't get me wrong. But man, the Democrat Party is swimming in pharma money. And by the way, so is almost the entire media. And that's why there's a conspiracy of silence on this very issue. Now, I just want to read this from Larry in Messenger, who's going to be, by the way, at the rally. He's the guy beside me. He always provides security, Air Force veteran, great guy. Now, this is what Larry wrote to me, okay? So, Jeff, he wrote to me on Messenger. Jeff, I got my associate's degree at Mass Bay Community College. There was no issue regarding vaccinations. Then in 2012, this is 13 years ago now, I had rolled over to Boston College for my bachelor's degree. They demanded I get all, and I mean all, the required vaccines, or I would be thrown out. It didn't matter that I got them in elementary school and that I got them all again when I was in the Air Force. Yes, Jeff, I was 42 years old at the time. I would have been barred from campus had I refused. How many times are you going to vaccinate this man? No, really. Remember, these vaccines are supposed to be good for life, right? You know, that's why they go, no, take them when you're young, you know, before, whatever, just before entering elementary school or when they're, 9 months old or a year old or 2 years old or whatever, and it's supposed to be good for the rest of your life. So you jab them all up before they go to school. Then you jab them all up again when he's in the Air Force. And then blank you, jab them all up one last time when he's in college or he wants to go to Boston College. And if you don't, they won't allow you on campus. So Big Pharma's making money once, twice, 3 times. And that's just on poor Larry. And Larry, I'm not trying to scare you or anything. Honestly, I have your, my concern is your health and your long-term, that your body isn't damaged in the long term. Is this even healthy? Like, have there been studies done? If you keep loading up shots after shots after shots, I don't know. Is this healthy? Could there be possible adverse side effects from just constantly vaccinating people over and over and over? And I'm not talking COVID. I'm talking about all the other shots. And now your child can't attend school, public or private, kindergarten all the way through high school. And now on top of all this, they're going to sterilize our children if they deem them transgender behind our backs. No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Now, what I'm telling you is they're going to lose. This is, again, it's like these El Salvadorian gangs and gang members. This is a 90-10 issue. But to make it a 90-10 issue, the country has to know about the issue. They don't know that this is going on, that these laws have already been passed in blue states, or that they're trying to do it here in Massachusetts. That's why we have to expose this and speak out. Agree, disagree. Dave in Gloucester. Thanks for holding, Dave, and welcome.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dave?
Jeff, who gives the government the right to take over somebody's kids, to take over a whole family, to where it's none of their business what the family does? Like the parents who got railroaded by DCF, who went to Texas to get their kids out of this state because of the way DCF is trying to take over everything with and take their kids away and put them in jail. Jeff, no, but they don't have any right to tell you what to do with anything that's going on in your household. And Jeff, it's going to be pathetic. I mean, it's like they're going to start saying, well, if you don't get the jab, you can't go to school. Well, good. That's what homeschool's for, if that's going to be the case, Jeff. And a lot of parents should start actually getting into that instead of being forced by DCF and this phony governor we have and this phony mayor that we have saying they all got to start doing this or else. Jeff, it's not right. And it's like, nothing for nothing, Jeff. But it seems like they want to keep on pushing these laws and start getting the parents all wild up. Jeff, what are they waiting for? An insurrection on the State House?
Well, Dave, what they're banking on is that the citizens are going to be quiet, that the citizenry are just going to, like during much of COVID, they're going to accept the mandates and they're going to accept the crushing of their freedoms and liberties, and that people will gripe and they'll complain, but they won't do anything. And the other thing they're banking on, Dave, again, it's a conspiracy of silence. Most people in Massachusetts, I bet you, I bet you dollars to donuts, have no clue what these bills are now making their way. By the way, both in the State House and the State Senate. It's going to pass if we don't block it. Now, most people in California, I don't even know this is going on. In Illinois, in Minnesota, in New York, they have no idea. You have no parental rights. You're like, what? No, parental consent is finished. What? Yeah. Look, if your child wants to start, quote unquote, transgender transitioning, they can give your child, I'm talking about like states like Minnesota or California, they can start giving your child these puberty blockers and sterilization, and you don't even know what's going on. And we're talking about, 8, 9, 10, forget 15, 16, 17, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And most parents would be like, what? Yeah, I didn't hear about it. That's the point. That's the point. And listen, I don't want to get sidetracked with transgenderism, but transgenderism now is becoming a big business. There's all these clinics, again, big pharma's involved, these drugs, these hormones. This is becoming a multi-billion-dollar industry. And they give money to politicians and they give money to the media. So there's a tremendous financial, economic self-interest at stake to lie about all this. And Dave, look, you're right. Okay. Ultimately, the solution for many is going to be homeschooling. Yes, I agree with you. But think about it. How many parents can homeschool their kids? Realistically, the father has to work. The mother has to work because they've made cost of living so high and so expensive. Biden, especially with inflation, so they can barely feed their kids and keep a roof over their head. Most parents simply cannot homeschool their kids because the mother and the father can't be at home. They're working. So it's really what they're trying to do now is destroy the family. That's what they're trying to do. In the name of, the children, like immunizing all the kids. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, I just want to quickly read this from Marianne from Florida, who listens faithfully almost every day. And I think she makes an absolutely outstanding point and very true. So, we're now essentially being coerced to have to vaccinate all of our kids, no matter what, whether we agree or disagree, whether we think it's in their best interests or not, or essentially our children will be banned from going to school, public, private, from kindergarten all the way through high school. By the way, and we're paying taxes. See, this is the thing I can't wrap my mind around this. So now again, full disclosure, I'm fully vaccinated. So is Grace. My parents vaccinated me. Grace's parents vaccinated her. Our children were, fully vaccinated. But say I didn't want to vaccinate them. So let me get this straight. I'm paying over $10,000 a year in property taxes. I'm paying local taxes, state income taxes, federal taxes. I could go on and on. Taxes up the wazoo. And I'm paying for my children's education. Okay, my taxes go right to the local schools that my children attend. And now you're telling me as a taxpayer that I can't send my kid to school because I choose not to meet your regimen of vaccinations? It's not just an assault on parental consent and parental authority. It's not just an assault on the family. It's an assault on taxpayers. I mean, am I missing something here? 617-266-6868. But look, she makes a very, very good point. And this is from Marianne. Good morning, Jeff. Well, good morning to you, Marianne. So tell me, Jeff, who's the dictator? Trump? No, it's the Democrats. But do you see how stupid they are? That they can't even see that it's their party that wants to determine whether they live and breathe or not. They've made drug companies a protected class because if something happens due to any of these vaccinations, you can't sue them no matter what. And by the way, does this apply to the illegals? Do their kids have to be vaccinated up one side and down another? I'd like the Democrats to answer that question. The brainwashing of the weak-minded is real. Here it is. Illegals do not have to vaccinate their kids. So, our children have to be completely vaccinated with all of these chemical cocktails. And if we object on whatever grounds and we pay the taxes, our children are barred, or in this case will be if these bills pass in Massachusetts, either are barred in some states or will be barred. We can't send our kids to public or private schools. We're literally forced to homeschool our kids. But the illegals can send all their kids to school, pay no taxes, and they don't have to be vaccinated one iota? I mean, I'm sorry. This is disgusting. I mean, this is, you want to talk about being third-class citizens in your own country. And she's completely right. Notice the legal immunity that Big Pharma and the drug companies have. Look what happened with the mRNA jab on COVID. How many adverse side effects? Nothing. You can't sue them. So it doesn't matter if they keep forcing you to take vaccine after vaccine after vaccine. And if your child doesn't have a good reaction to it, or you don't think it's in the best interest of your child, no one can sue them. They're untouchable. But we now have governments ramming down their drugs or down our throats and that of our children. And you think it stops at the children? It's not going to stop at the children. What they're going to say is, okay, you can't go to college without taking the jab or without taking the vaccinations. Okay, you can't get a job. You can't work. What they're trying to do is impose sweeping vaccine mandates upon all of society. And so really what the government is saying, yes, they're saying your children belong to them, not to us. It's the government's child, not your child. But ultimately what they're saying is, and that's why I'm telling you it's communism or fascism, either one. You, me, all of us, our bodies belong to the state. They don't just own our children, they own us. We stopped them temporarily during the COVID pandemic and the mandates and the lockdowns. And now the radical left is just picking up where they left off. Agree, disagree. Mel in New York. Thanks for holding, Mel, and welcome.
Yes, good morning, Jeff. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure, Mel.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You know, I had a lawn sign that I had in front of my house during the November general election, and there was there was a proposal on the reverse side of our ballot, and it was for the issue that you're speaking about now. And the sign reads, protect parental rights, vote no, and it's Proposition 1. That's what it's called here in New York State, Prop 1. And so I'm going to call my state representative, Jimmy Tedesco, and find out where this issue lies within the state or the state assembly. Whether this is going to go, I mean, well, sure, it's on the floor. I just want to know, what the status is. But yeah, what I think the Democrats are trying to do, they're trying to evoke a violent reaction from the city, from the public, because as Dave was saying, what right has the government to dictate to you what goes on in your household? This is not their position. Like you said, we pay we sign the front of their paychecks. They work for us, not the other way around. We're not their, they're not royalty. We're not their subjects. They're pushing. They're just pushing it, as you said. They're pushing and pushing to just control every aspect, every waking moment of your life, even while you're asleep too, Jeff. And this is it's got to stop. And like I said, I'm going to call Tedesco and find out where, and I'll jump down his throat and dance on his liver. I mean, if he doesn't really get off his backside and push the other Republican side of the assembly to oppose this. This is, it's totally ridiculous.
No, Mel, look, you're completely right. Mel, as usual, you're full of common sense, and you're completely right. And look, the reason, and the only reason why, and these really are Marxists and communists. That's what they really are. The reason why these Marxists and communists are winning on the issue is not because it's popular. Again, really, it's a 90, maybe 80-20, but I think it's a 90-10 issue. It's that they're doing it through subterfuge. They're doing it in the shadows. Most people have no idea what the hell their state legislatures or in the state assembly, as you guys are calling it up in New York, but they have no idea what's going on. They don't follow anything, and no one's informing them. But when you know about this, you've got to ring the alarm bell. You can't be passive, not when it comes to our children and grandchildren, ultimately us. The state does not own our body, and the state does not own our children. And you're completely right. If the state can come into our homes, in our families, and dictate something as personal and intimate as vaccines and vaccinations, or whether your child can be sterilized or not, without you even knowing about it, holy mackerel. This is communist China. So, look, we're a free society as long as the citizens are willing to defend and protect their fundamental rights and liberties. And, I remember my professors taught me this. Okay, they were brilliant men, and actually a couple of women, brilliant men and women. And they said, you have to understand, Jeff, the greatest threat to individual freedom in the history of the world is the state. It's the government. Government wants to constantly grow its power. The state wants to constantly grow its power. Politicians feed on power. It's the ultimate aphrodisiac. And so the job of citizens, and it used to be that of the media, but the media now has been completely co-opted by the state. Okay? Completely compromised and taken over. But the job of the citizens is always to keep the state, the government, in check. And that's what our founding fathers literally fought the American Revolution for. That's what they fought for at Concord and Lexington. That's what they fought for on July 4th, 1776, with Jefferson's famous Declaration of Independence. Now, if you're not going to fight for your own fundamental God-given rights and liberties, and that of your children or your grandchildren, politicians aren't. Bureaucrats aren't. They want more power, not less. And so that's why we've got to start speaking out. Now, what I really want to stress to you is, I'm telling you, even most liberals and Democrats are with us on this issue. I'm telling you. whatever signs they put up on their front yards, they don't want their children jabbed behind their backs. They don't. No sane person does. They don't want their children to undergo public, hormones or sterilization or without at least their parental knowledge and consent. This is an issue we can break the left and expose how extreme and totalitarian, and I'm choosing my words carefully. This is totalitarian. How extreme and radical and dangerous the left has become. But you got to fight. You got to talk. You got to speak out. And I've always said this. The strongest, greatest weapon in the world is the truth. But you have to speak it. Kara in Haverhill. Thanks for holding, Kara, and welcome.
Much for taking my call
My
and
pleasure.
for having this segment this morning. We really appreciate it. So I've been in this fight since the first time Rep. Vargas introduced the bill to remove religious exemption. It feels like forever. It's been probably 3 or 4 years. So the majority of my young children's life, they've known me in this fight and, overwhelmed and stressed about this issue of removing them from schools. So just to back up and give your callers some factual information, the bill in question here, we have 2 bills regarding removing the religious exemption. That is S1557 filed by Senator Roush and H2554 filed by Representative Vargas. You've done a great job giving us the background and the details of these bills, but what I'd like to point out is that this session is a bit different. They've taken a different approach because they had a bold and unprecedented shift, and they had a hearing where they called in the Massachusetts Medical Society, and they had a hearing and they testified to legislators and the health action groups that have voiced, opposition to these bills. They weren't invited. They were barred from participating in that hearing, so no dissenting views were allowed. So it really wasn't a balanced discussion, and it's really a bold and strategic signal that there is momentum this session to eliminate the exemption. And, as I mentioned, we've been in this fight for a number of years, and many of us are worn out, we're worn down, and they're betting on that. So we have to rise up this session. We have to, approach our legislators. We have to voice opposition to this so that we cannot be compliant now more than ever. That's point one I wanted to make. Point two is someone said, you should just homeschool. Well, that's really not an option for anyone who holds a job, and especially not an option for anyone that has a child on an individualized education, special education plan, because please note that those children would also be barred from attending school and accessing vital services to their education. So I didn't know if you're still with me, Jeff.
No, Kara, you're doing great. Look, the only thing I would just interject, and you're dead on, is see how tolerant they are? Look at the tolerance, Kara, huh? Look at how confident they are in their position. So they're not even willing to allow the other side to get their viewpoints across? There's no opposition allowed? No dissent allowed? This is my point, Kara. They're totalitarian thugs. And to reinforce what you're saying, I want to protect the privacy of my children. But, for example, my Ava, okay, my beautiful 12-year-old daughter, who I hope will show up at the rally on Thursday. We'll see if her mother lets her go, but let that go. Because my wife is a bit nervous about these rallies. But anyway, I'm trying to get my wife and my kids to come, but we'll see. But the point is, Kara, she's on an IEP. My 12-year-old has dyslexia. She's got ADHD. So they had to put her on an IEP. And the school that she now goes to has done an incredible job because they have certain experts, really good teachers, about 3 or 4 of them, and they've come together and really Ava's education level and learning ability has been transformed in the last 2 years. She's like a different child. Homeschooling for us would not work. I'm telling you, it just would not work because we don't have the capabilities to deal with Ava's issues. And so you're right. You're completely right. I'm nodding my head up and down. So for many of us, homeschooling, it's not an option. It's not an option. Kara, you're on a roll. Please keep going.
I want to also point out that Roush's bill gives the Massachusetts Department of Public Health the authority to add in any vaccine to the current required schedule of vaccinations for children in Massachusetts. So if that bill were to pass, you're basically giving over, your child's medical authority to the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. So I think that's a really big point here that needs to be understood. So they can just kind of willy-nilly add any vaccination to the schedule that they want. They can do it at any time. They don't have to have legislator approval, which I believe is the law as it stands now. So I think we should all...
Kara, can they add the COVID-19 jab, for example?
Yeah, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to pass these bills so that everybody's hands are tied. And they're working in cahoots with, all the medical agencies and all the pro-vaccine agencies in the state of Massachusetts so that they can push these vaccines into the schedule. It's very deliberate. Incredible.
Kara, I've got to ask you this. How much lobbying, how much money is coming from Big Pharma? Because this is going to be a bonanza for them. I know they're already making a ton of money, but if these bills pass, this is going to line their pockets even more. Are you noticing now that Big Pharma is putting a full court press to get these bills passed?
I would say so based on the hearing that they had and the Massachusetts Medical Society led it. So, yeah, I think they see what's happening with Kennedy. Going into HHS, I think they're fearful. I think they're scrambling like little rats to try to get these bills through to protect them and protect their pockets. No doubt.
Kara, will you be there on Thursday? Can your people show up? We need your people to show up. We've got to show strength in numbers now, and numbers are everything.
Again, I'll pull out the signs in the basement that I have, and I go, every time. But before, we conclude, Jeff, I want to point out that these bills would not only keep your children out of school, they would keep your children out of any activity that requires an immunization record. So even though the bill doesn't, call out and say they're going to, eliminate access to any clubs or activities, that's absolutely what's going to happen. So you can say goodbye to your summer camp. You could say goodbye to your after-school activities. You could say goodbye to club soccer, scouting. The list goes on and on. They are excluding our children from society. So it's bigger than just the school.
Kara, am I exaggerating when I say in many ways it's like the COVID lockdowns all over again?
Yes.
Yes, that I'm exaggerating, or yes, that it's true?
No, you're not exaggerating. No, it's true because your child cannot attend any school, public or private. This will go into college. This will go into daycares as well. Let's not leave that out. And not only, school attendance, daycare, college, community college. Let's also consider any kind of activity outside of your home your child will be excluded from.
This is totalitarian. This is unbelievable. Kara, outstanding call. Please don't be a stranger. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. And Kara, let's get the word out. We got to show up on Thursday for the rally at noon. Kara, thank you very much for that call. Again, huge rally. I'll be emceeing, speaking, sponsored by American Made Action. 2 days from today, Thursday, noon, at the State House in front of Boston Common, Kuhner Country. We've got to do this, my friend. We've got to do it. All right. Okay, Mike says 1 minute. I don't want to rush Mark in Medford. So I'm going to take more of your calls on the other side. Let me just quickly reset. Laws have now been passed in over a half dozen states. Soon it's going to be 10 or 12 states. Bills are now pending here in Massachusetts that would abolish all religious exemptions on school-mandated vaccinations. That means your child doesn't have the vaccines, they cannot go to public or private school, K to 12 schools. Furthermore, sterilization. your child now, 5 to 17 years old, if they want to become transgender or transition. Mark in Medford. Thanks for holding, Mark, and as always, welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. Don't mind me today. My allergies are kicking my ass.
I was going to ask you. You sound sick, but it's not. You don't have a cold. It's the allergies.
No, I'm just allergies, Jeff. So a couple of callers and a couple of messages, they kind of stole a little bit of my thunder, so I'm going to add to it. Okay, I'm going to look at this, Jeff, now as a test to the people of Massachusetts and all the other liberal whack job blue states that want to impose these, dictations, if you so to speak, on us. I'm gonna look at this as a test and ask them a question, and I'm gonna put a challenge out to every liberal whack job that listens to your show, because you know they do, Jeff. They're just afraid to call. But I want to issue a challenge right now. I want you to call the Kuhner man, and I want you to say to him, "Yes, Jeff, this is what I voted for." And I want to see how many people call up, because Jeff, I'm sorry, but even liberals got to say, okay, hands off my freaking kids.
Mark, I'm just curious, what do you find more disturbing? That they would force these vaccinations on all of our kids, and if we don't comply, that they would bar them from, daycare, kindergarten, elementary, middle, high school, clubs, after-school programs, you name it, college even, or that they're willing now to sterilize our children behind our backs in the name of transgenderism. That they would literally go so far as to take, say, a 12, like my Ava as an example. She's 12, very, very, she's gullible. She's very easy to sway. She's very impressionable, and say, no, sweetie, you may think you're a girl, but you're really a boy. And if you think you're a boy, and you do think you're a boy, maybe we should start transitioning you. And we're going to put you on these drugs and these puberty blockers and these hormones and everything else, which causes her to not be able to have children. And you will do this behind the parents' back? Without the parents' knowledge? Forget consent. No consent, but not even knowledge. I mean, Mark, honestly, what do you find more disturbing and more chilling?
Jeff, I find it all sick, disturbing, and chilling. I can't pick one or the other. It is all sick and twisted and demented. But what these people don't realize, Jeff, is this is the United States of America. You don't tell the people how to raise their kids. You don't tell the people what to do. We tell you what we want you to do. And if you don't do that, as fast as we put you there is as fast as we'll take you the F out.
Mark, drop the mic. 617-266-6868. Okay, let me ask all of you. It's the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's quality roofing, siding, and windows. And in many ways now, it's the ultimate question for, many people in blue states across the country, and soon very here in Massachusetts. Should the government be allowed to ban your children from attending school, K to 12, if they are not vaccinated? Should the government be allowed to ban your child or any child from attending K to 12 schools, public or private? Doesn't matter, because that's what they're doing. Public or private, if your child is not vaccinated. A, yes. B, no. And you know where I stand. I am a hell no. Forgive me, almost a blank you no. But that's me. I want to hear from you. You can vote on our webpage, WRKO.com. WRKO.com/Kuhner, WRKO.com/Kuhner, KUHN is in National ER. You can also vote via X. I was very active on this very issue last night on X. If you're not following me, I urge you all to follow me. You can vote on my X handle at the Kuhner Report. KUHN is in National ER at the Kuhner Report. Rich in Boston. Thanks for holding, Rich, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Rich.
You speak for hopefully a majority of parents. I'm a parent, and there's no way on God's green earth that our government is going to get away with that. And I'll be there on Thursday at noon, and we're talking about the State House?
Yes, yeah, at the State House, right in front of Boston Commons. Rich, if you don't mind, I want to hold you over, and I want to share something with you, which is happening in our personal lives, Grace and obviously my own and the Kuhner family. 617-266-6868 if you want to be part of the show. Okay, I want to go back to Rich in Boston, but before I do, just very, very quick. So last night, actually yesterday afternoon, forgive me, Kuhner man went to see my doctor, just a routine checkup. Everything is fine. And I'm driving back home. I'm in my driveway. I'm pulling up to the garage. And I'm telling you, I saw my daughter, my beautiful Ava, who I love, I adore. And she's playing by herself in the backyard. But she's running around, jumping on all fours. She's like jumping all over the grass on all fours. And I found it, I've never complained about her playing in all the 12 years. I want you to know that. She gets herself dirty. She plays in the sand, or she used to play in the sandbox. She plays with Rocky. They roll around. They have fun. My point being, I was never disturbed or found her behavior bizarre or just very off-putting. And I'm like, this is really strange. Why is she jumping like a dog or a cat or a rabbit? And she's running around the backyard, but on all fours. And then I guess she noticed that I had just come in in the driveway, and I was parked in front of the garage. So she comes out of the backyard. She knocks on the door, my car door. And I said, what is it? I call her Sweet Cheeks. I said, what is it, Sweet Cheeks? And she said, Dad, were you watching me in the backyard? And I said, why? Why do you ask? And she said, well, I don't want you to tell Mom. I said, well, what don't you want me to tell Mom? Now, here it is. Dad, I was pretending to be a furry. I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, I'm pretending to be a furry. And she lists 5 friends of hers. She names them. Bang, 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 bang. 5 names. Who she goes to school with. Who they are what's called furries. And many of you may ask, Jeff, what the hell is a furry? A furry is a child. Listen to this. Okay, it's all part of this transgender insanity. Doesn't identify as, say, a girl identifies as a boy, or a boy identifies as a girl, or non-binary, or whatever. They're a they or a them. They're multiple people. No. They identify as furry animals. I'm not kidding. Usually it's either a dog or a cat. And so she's now telling me that because it's peer pressure, and I think it's also influence from her friends. She sees them, and, the kids are impressionable. But she says, no, they're during school recess, in the schoolyard, they're imitating furries. And many of them are bringing, I'm not kidding, paws, like play paws and little like tails, furry tails. And they literally are telling people to identify them and call them a dog or a cat. And they will meow and they will bark. In fact, there's one student, listen to this, pretends to be a dog or identifies as a dog, keeps biting other students, literally biting like a dog. And the teachers are afraid to rein this child in for fear of being sued for discriminating against a furry. I'm telling you. Okay, this is not a joke. Now, I think it's just a phase. I said, Ava, I don't want you to do that at school. Do you understand? You want to horse around in the house, okay? I spoke about it with Grace. Grace just thinks it's a phase. Don't make a big deal about it. Eventually, she'll move on to something else. So don't blow it up, because if you blow it up, you'll actually make her do the behavior even more. That's Grace's thinking, and so I defer to Grace. But my point being, this is my concern. If she starts to identify as a furry at school, because I can't be with her at school. I'm at work. Grace is at work. I can't follow my daughter 24 hours a day at school. Well, now she's going to be put into the transgender category. And once you become part of the transgender category, I'm not kidding, that's when they start to say, do you want to transition? Like maybe you're kind of a non-binary person? Maybe you're kind of a they and a them? And maybe that's why you're running around with the, a furry tail and these paws. And they wear these things that imitate like a dog's ears or dog's cats on their head. And literally they walk around the schoolyard on fours, jumping around, either meowing or barking. And apparently this is happening in schools all over the country. Not just in blue states, all over the country. Now, if this bill passes, or if I was living in Connecticut, or if I was living in California, or if I was living in Washington State or Oregon or in Minnesota, I'm telling you that if they were able, and my daughter is gullible and my daughter is impressionable, she's got a beautiful heart, but she's very trusting of authority, and she can be easily swayed and manipulated. You're going to give her sterilization? You're going to give her puberty blockers or hormones to start transitioning her to become some kind of an animal or some kind of a non-binary person? And I wouldn't even know about it? Grace wouldn't know about it? Never mind our consent. Forget, we wouldn't even know. Do you see how evil this is? Do you see how evil this is? So what I'm trying to tell you is, really, I'm not trying to pat myself on the shoulder. God is my witness, okay? I'm being, like in the confessional, I don't think you can get more all-American than the Kuhner man and the Kuhner family, really. We really are your all-American family. And my daughter is imitating a furry in my backyard because of what she sees, and it's a very middle-class neighborhood that we live in, middle-class community, middle-class school, many excellent teachers. That's what's happening in America. We have to stop this. Because what could just be a silly phase, peer pressure, wanting to be like other kids, whatever it may be, you think it's cool, you look back in retrospect, you go, I was so stupid when I was in school. Okay, we've all had those moments. But they could turn this into something incredibly dangerous and destructive and permanent. Once you're sterilized, it's over. Once you take those puberty blockers and those hormones, the damage is done. And by the way, it's not just sterilization. Last point. You're not able to enjoy, forgive me, intercourse. It's a family show. I got to be careful. People have their kids in the car. That's it. That's done. Both boys and girls. That's it. It's done. You'll never enjoy it. That's part of the side effects of this that they're imposing on our kids. I mean, come on. This is turning into a nightmare. So I want to go back to Rich in Boston, because Rich was making the point, if you love your children, if you love your grandchildren, you have to oppose this. Rich, I've got to ask you, now that you've heard my story and what's going on in my family, and it may be much ado about nothing, it just may be a small little phase, but how can we give the government and the state that kind of power over our children, knowing how children are so impressionable and can be made, under pressure from authority, from teachers, from friends, to do some of the most stupidest things or believe some of the most stupidest things imaginable? Rich, are we losing control over our families and over our kids? What say you?
I say nay on that, Jeff. Thank you for getting the word out. Hang on a second. I'm going to keep it clean, and you have to, you and Grace work, and you have to be able to trust their mentors while you're not around. And I am going to send you a letter via snail mail. And our children are the future of not only the nation, but the world. And I have zero tolerance for what you were just speaking about. I have experience with autistic children, you name it, across the spectrum. And you don't have to inject them with anything. And I am going to keep this clean, and I would like to see 2 people tarred and feathered. And you may edit this or not, and I'm going to say, pardon me, Mr. Fauci and Mr. Cuomo, and as far as getting the jab and all that stuff, if you don't stand up, then they're going to just roll over us. I'm an American.
No, you're Rich. You're right. Look, you're an American, and we have God-given rights. They're not given to us by the government. They're not given us to by the state. They're given to us by God Almighty, and no force on earth can take them away from us. Okay. I just quickly, lines are jammed. I want to go to the blazing phone lines, but before I do, this is something that Ryan messaged me on Messenger, and I think he really put his finger on it. Jeff, you're missing the point. If your children are not vaccinated, then you will be found in neglect, and your children will be taken away from you by DCF or in other states, Child Protective Services. That is a really, really good point. We're focusing, I get it, on the religious exemptions and how they're trying to get rid of them now for, all students or all children. And if you claim a religious exemption, you don't vaccinate your child, then your child will not be allowed to attend K-12 schools, public or private. And of course, now they want to start sterilizing our children in the name of transgenderism without the parents' knowledge or consent. So yes, it's a parental consent issue. It's a parental authority issue. It's a family issue. It's a child issue. It's ultimately a freedom issue, a medical freedom issue. But I think Ryan really is onto something. What they're really trying to do is say, okay, you don't vaccinate your children, or as Kara pointed out, they're going to keep adding new vaccines once this bill passes, if it passes. And I think we can block it, but that's up to us. That depends on the rally. That depends on other factors. But I think we can block it. But say it passes, then they can add all kinds of other vaccines to these school-mandated vaccinations. The COVID jab, I take it to the bank. Okay? I guarantee it. As sure as the sun rises, that they're going to add the COVID-19 jab. Now, you're going to say, many of you are going to say, you're crazy. Absolutely not. Now they can come in and take your child away from you. That's going to be the end game. To take possession and seize the children. And that's how you break parents. Okay, fine. Don't take my children. Jab them up, shoot them up, vaccinate them. Please, just do it, whatever. But please don't take my kids away from me. And so ultimately, this is the issue now. It's the most profound philosophical issue any people or any nation can decide. What kind of a country, what kind of a society are we going to be? Are we going to have a secular socialist superstate, all powerful, all omnipotent, a la communist China, as an example, in which the rights of the government, collectivism, supersedes the individual, supersedes the family, supersedes parents? Or are we going to have a God-centered country and society based on individual rights and freedom, on the autonomy and independence of the family, and based on parental authority and parental consent? Do our children fall under the responsibility, as is the natural moral order, of mommy and daddy? Or is now the state the mother and the father, the ultimate nanny state? That's the issue. Fundamentally, that's the issue. And I just want to very quickly say to many parents who are listening, who say, well, my kids are jabbed, whatever. My kids have been vaccinated. It's not going to affect them. Oh, no. Au contraire. I'm telling you, you're making a big mistake. First, they're going to keep adding vaccines to the schedule. They're going to force eventually the COVID jab. It's coming. That's number one. Number two, if they can vaccinate your child against your will or behind your back, if they can sterilize your child and give them hormone therapy and puberty blockers behind your back without your consent, you think it stops there? You think it stops there? And they'll keep controlling them through college, and they'll start controlling them throughout all of adulthood. They will determine how you can work, under what conditions. In other words, it's the vaccine mandate. It's the COVID lockdowns through the back door. And Kara hit the nail on the head, one of the previous callers. They are petrified now of RFK Jr. and MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. And so, like rats on a sinking ship, they want to ram through all of these totalitarian bills before Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can get Health and Human Services squared away, clean house, and ready to start going after these pharmaceutical companies. That's why now they're launching an all-out blitzkrieg. We've got to stop them now. Now. Agree, disagree. Thomas in Florida. Thanks for holding, Thomas, and welcome.
Good morning.
Hi, Thomas.
Yes, hi. I have a big concern down here. We go to school board meetings, even though we're like seniors. Parents down here at work, like you say. Both parents work, so we oversee what's going on. And we have a problem down here in Indian River County that a lot of these elected officials are woke, and a lot of them are Democratic, and there's no representation, so they do what they want, and they do this stuff behind the scenes, like putting the wrong books on shelves and stuff. The reason I'm calling is, and a lot of these people down here have grandchildren up in Massachusetts and different states, blue states, Connecticut, you name it, New York, and we need to be able to get your word down here and all the mainstream media channels down here, plus Massachusetts, if we're able to get them or stream them through Roku, I have had a heck of a time trying to find you when you have your rallies. Is there a way to get that word out down here? Because a lot of these parents and grandparents are going to be outraged when they hear this stuff.
Well, Thomas, we're going to be streaming the rally on Facebook, on X. It's at noon in 2 days at the State House in front of the Boston Common. So people can see it all over on YouTube. They can see it on Rumble. They'll be able to see it on social media. But no, look, Thomas, that's one of the reasons why. Again, I'm kind of talking out of school, but I'm going to be, you asked an honest question. I'm going to give you an honest answer. I've been trying very hard to syndicate the show. I'm not bragging. The ratings are through the roof. This is what management keeps telling me, that they've never seen ratings like this. We've got not just huge local ratings. We've got national ratings. Our streaming numbers are some of the highest iHeart has ever seen. And I'm being blocked. And I think I know who's blocking me. But I'm being deliberately blocked. Economically, this show should be on 300, 400, 500 stations. The kind of money, the kind of revenue that we bring in, the kind of audience that we have, the listenership that we have, the time spent listening. That's another thing iHeart cannot believe. The average listener, how much time they will spend listening to this show. I'm not bragging, but since you asked, I'm just telling you the truth. So I have been working as hard as I can to get this show. I want it on every market in Florida. I want it all along the East Coast. I want it in Texas. I want it across the heartland. I want it all the way up to Oregon, Washington, California. Yet I am being deliberately blocked. They're afraid to get my message out. They don't want my message out. Because honestly, Thomas, I made a vow I will not be bought and paid for. I'm in a confessional. I truly believe this as a man, as a Christian, as a Catholic, as a patriot, as an American. When I meet my maker, I don't want to go to hell. I really believe in heaven and hell. I don't want to go to hell. And when I face my judgment day, I want to be able to face it with a clean conscience. And so I don't want to sell my soul. I don't want to sell it. I don't live for money. I mean, sure, I like money. I mean, I have a house, I have cars, I got payments, I got kids. But really, I'm not going to prostitute myself for my career. And I'm not going to lie to people or not cover certain issues because sponsors prefer it, or corporate head, people at the corporate managers or people at the top of the corporate food chain don't want me to talk about certain things. I'm not like that. I can't be like that. I can't look at myself in the mirror. And for the life of me, Thomas, I swear to you, this is what I don't get. There are certain people in the media who have made so much money. I'm talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. They could self-finance themselves. And they don't. They still play the corporate game. Like, I don't understand how you're not going to take it with you. Look, you build a company, you have a lot of employees, you make a ton of money. God bless you. That's the free enterprise system. And I support it 1,000%. I'm not making an economic point or a political point. I'm making a personal moral point. Like, after a while, how much is enough? So you have a chance with all of this money to be completely independent and to really speak from your heart what you really believe. And no, they will allow themselves to be censored, to be edited, to be silenced, to be manipulated, to not talk about certain issues. Here, notice, Fox News is not covering this story. The local media is not covering this story. CNN, MSNBC. Why? None of their hosts are covering this story. It's a massive story. It's happening all over the country. Why? Because look at their ads. They're bought and paid for by Big Pharma. Every second ad is a Big Pharma ad. It's Moderna, it's Pfizer, it's Merck, it's whatever it is. So they pay them these hosts, $20, $25, $30 million. Shut up and read the script we put in front of you. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to sell my birthright and our birthright as Americans for 20, 25, 30 million dollars. But, after a while, you make 100 million, 150 and 200 million. You can't buy a couple of radio stations. Like, really, you can set up your own show now on YouTube. Pay some staff. I mean, you've got money now to take care of 3 generations of your family. They're so greedy. That's the part, or they're so addicted to fame and they think if they go, independent, they won't have the same reach or the same audience. Who cares? I mean, for God's sakes, we're only on earth one time. That's it. Make the most of it. I say this to people all the time. Have you no fear of God? Like, really? Don't you have any fear? No? Like, God's going to ask you, I gave you so much. What did you do with your life? You know the expression? To much is given, to whom much is given, much is expected. You live in the greatest, wealthiest, freest country in the world. And you've been blessed with hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. God bless you. And what did you do with that money? Did you speak the truth? Did you stand for something? Did you advance the cause of liberty and freedom? No. You asked Paul Ryan at Fox, I'm just giving Fox as an example, but you asked Paul Ryan whether you can cover an issue or not cover an issue. You had to ask the Murdoch sons, these liberal, liberal anti-Trump children, can I say this or can I say that? Is that okay or is that not okay? Nobody on Fox News had the guts to say that the 2020 election was stolen when everybody there knew it was stolen. Because they would be cut off at the knees and they'd be fired on the spot. They should be ashamed of themselves. CNN, they're even bigger whores and prostitutes. MSNBC, even worse if that's possible. So honestly, Thomas, I don't want to sell my soul. And that's my problem. Now, I don't know how. I don't know how I'm still on the air. I mean, look, it's because of the audience. It's because of the massive support I have. It's because we somehow keep generating money and we're staying on the air. But Thomas, we should be having our message and this show on 500-600 stations across the country. And I'm blocked at every single turn. And one last thing, Thomas, since you asked an honest answer, I want to give you a full honest. Since you asked an honest question, I want to give you a full honest answer. You wouldn't believe the jealousy by certain people in talk radio. Pretty much people can figure out who. Other talk show hosts. Oh my God, are they jealous? Oh, the envy and jealousy. And by the way, they have 10 times more money than I have. And I'm like, great, honestly, great. You got multiple mansions, great. Seriously, I mean it, great. God bless you. They see my ratings, they see my numbers, they see my audience, and they're jealous. They're jealous. And so they're trying to do everything possible to stab me in the back, to get me fired, to get me taken off the air. And honestly, it's pathetic. Really, it's pathetic. So, Thomas, long answer to your question. We're going to be streaming the rally on Tuesday. It's going to be on Thursday. Forgive me. We're going to be streaming the rally on Thursday in 2 days. It's going to be all over social media. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Rumble. And with the help of this audience, God willing, we'll be on dozens and hundreds of stations. But it's in God's hands. So, Thomas, I'm doing everything I can to expand the reach of this show. Because when you have callers like this, and you have an audience like this, to me, it's almost like it's 1776 all over again. I say this to Grace all the time. Kuhner country is the heir to the American Revolution. The best patriots in the world are Kuhner country. Thomas, thank you for that call. Bruce in Woburn. Thanks for holding, Bruce, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff.
Bruce, Bruce, how are you, my friend? Nobody does a moonbat howl like you, I got to tell you that. You have that down to a T. You should patent that, Bruce. You know that guy that goes, let's get ready to rumble or whatever? He patents that. No one else can say it. Same thing with you. This howl, you should patent that, Bruce.
I have a patent, Jeff, and it's all because of you. And by the way, Bona Basqua.
Thank you. Happy Easter, Bruce, or whatever, belated Easter. Hope you had a blessed, happy Easter, my friend. Bruce, what do you make of all this?
It's way too crazy for me, Jeff. And thank God I don't have children, because I would be like out there like Pluto. But this whole thing with the vaccines and all this stuff. Now look what's going on in Texas, Jeff. The outbreaks of measles. And why? Because of all the illegals that came in here that brought these diseases with them. Where we were all set with that. I had measles when I was a kid. I had chicken pox. We all had these things. And no one's going to force anybody, I don't think, and to get any kind of... And what they're doing with these people is just unheard of. It shouldn't be allowed, Jeff. That's like me telling you who to vote for. I have no right to tell anybody who to do, what to do, how to do it. We just need to go to work and take care of our family like those people were doing. And look what's happening. I'm not going to be able to make it to the rally, Jeff. I wish I could. But I just want to reach out to the Kuhner country. And this is our country. We are the people. And these moonbats, they just want to push the agenda.
Well, they want to control us. No, you nailed it. It's about power and control. And look, Bruce, again, as usual, you put your finger right on it. Ultimately, this is the question now we have to ask ourselves. Do the politicians work for us, or do we work for the politicians? Really, that's the question now. Who's the boss? Who really runs the United States of America? Is it this permanent political class, these government overlords, and wannabe authoritarian dictators? That's what they are, really. Or is it we, the American people, the voters, the people, through our elected representatives? That's the issue. That's really the fundamental issue. No, I'm sorry. Ava and Ashton are the responsibility of Grace and myself. They don't belong to the government. They don't. And no, they can say it. They can pass as many laws as they want. It's not going to work. The people are going to rise up and they're going to rebel, and they should rebel. It's not the government's children. They're our children. Alyssa in Gardner. Thanks for holding, Alyssa, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Alyssa.
I heard this the other morning, and it hit home so hard. Trump is not a savior. He's a tourniquet. And we, as the parents, need to do the work to really cast that all the way out. They just want us parents to kind of shut up and do it. And everyone should follow Health Action MA, because when these hearings come, please come and testify.
Alyssa, can you do me a favor? Can you please hang on? I'm up against a hard break. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, just another heads up on Thursday. Yes, 2 days from today at high noon, at the steps of the State House, right in front of the Boston Commons. Huge rally against, well, to reunite the Rivera family, clearly, but a huge rally to protest these outrageous actions by DCF and lawmakers up on Beacon Hill, who are now trying to take away parental consent, parental authority, and our ability to decide what is best for our children. It is sponsored by American Made Action. I will be there. I will be speaking, and I hope as many of you show up as possible. Let's go right back to Alyssa in Gardner. Alyssa, you were making, I thought, a brilliant observation. Trump is not the savior. He's the tourniquet. And then you were saying we've got to show up in numbers, not just at the rally, but when they introduce these bills and invite questions and feedback from the voters, that's where citizens have to show up and make their voices heard. Please, Alyssa, pick up where you left off.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Yeah, no, I think that it gets really kind of lost. Like we've won. We won in November. We have Trump. We have JD. We have Bobby. We need to keep winning. So parents need to fight for their parental rights, because this is a coordinated effort by the pharmaceutical companies to restrict our rights. It happened in Connecticut. It happened in California. It happened in Maine. I personally thought Maine would never go south, and Maine went south the fastest we've ever seen. So it's unfortunate. In New Hampshire, it's coming for you next. So you guys better watch out up there.
Alyssa, what is, in your view, what do you think is the end goal? I mean, I know the pharmaceuticals want to keep pumping our kids with vaccines. They want to get the COVID jab into everybody. That's their ultimate aim. I get that. So they're all about the profit, and they need the power and the control to get the profit. I get that. But, you know, take these Democrats in California or the Dems in Connecticut or many of these lawmakers up in Maine and now here in Massachusetts. What is it like? Ultimately, what is it that they want to control every aspect of our life? Are we going to get to the point now where they're going to decide how many children we can eventually have, like in China? You know, have like a one-child policy? Well, they can decide if we get married, if we don't get married. They can decide who we are as people, whether we're men, whether we're women, whether we're... In other words, what is their end goal? That's what I'd love to know. What is it? They keep wanting to control our bodies and the bodies of our children and turn us into their property. To what end?
Correct. And as we've seen with Gavin Newsom, it's do as I say, but not as I do. Gavin broke his own protocols for COVID over and over again to control his population, and they continue to cramp down on the population. And people are fleeing California, and people will flee Massachusetts. But my concern is if we don't stand up now for our rights in our state individually, then every state is going to follow. They want control. They want to control every aspect of our life for their own profit. And I think you're right with end goal there. But
you think it's ultimately, basically, I mean, I don't want to overdo this, but it's almost like a new form of slavery, right? I mean, it's almost as if they want to create a kind of slaveholding or a ruling class, sort of like what they have in communist China. And the rest of us are literally at their mercy. They control our information. They control our education. They control our bodies. They control our children. Ultimately, it's like 1984. It's a totalitarian future where the all-powerful state and the people who run it dominate and control and exploit every aspect of our lives. Is that what this is, Alyssa?
It's been happening since COVID. It hasn't stopped. If anything, it's ramped up. They feel more powerful.
Incredible. Incredible.
Yeah.
Alyssa, when you talk to your friends, people in your circle, are they aware of this? And are the natives starting to get restless? Are the peasants now saying enough is enough?
It is amazing to see. I have friends on the left. I have friends on the right. I have friends on the center. I have libertarian friends. We all come together to fight these bills. We put everything aside to to advocate for our parental rights, our religious rights, our children's education. That's a beautiful thing. We have a grassroots community at Health Action MA of people from across the spectrum. We put everything aside to fight.
God bless you, Alyssa. I hope to see you and as many of you at Health Action MA at the rally on Thursday. Alyssa, God bless you and keep up the great fight. I really appreciate it. Joe in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Joe, and welcome.
Good morning. I hope you're doing well.
Very good, Joe.
I just wanted to tell you, a few years ago, we went to see an exorcist at St. Marie Parish in Manchester, New Hampshire. His name was Father Chad Ripperger. He's all over YouTube. And he warned, this is just so interesting to me and so actually really scary. He warned that even just assuming positions of yoga can open our souls to evil influences. So this, when you said, go ahead, Ava, go ahead, pretend to be a furry in your backyard. If Father Ripperger is right, you should tell her, do not do that even in private. This is very, very scary. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but this is what The Exorcist says. So another thing, too, is that The Exorcist movie was based on a kid. That's a real true life story. His name was Ronald Edwin Hunkler. And the way that he became possessed is that he was playing with a Ouija board with his aunt. And that's how the whole thing started. So, Jeff, I suspect that public school teachers are actually teaching satanic cults to our kids in the schools underneath the radar.
Joe, can you hang on? I'm up against a hard break. I want to come right back to Joe. 617-266-6868. Okay, I want to go right back to Joe in New Hampshire. Before I do, though, I want to read a text that I got that I think is very provocative, but is true. And we've talked about this in the past, but it kind of reminds us, if we, take us back 3-4 years to those COVID days. And it's true. It's all true. And the pharmaceuticals have not given up, and the globalists have not given up what their ultimate end goal is. So this is from 781. You can text us 70470, 70470. Jeff, the end goal of the pharmaceutical companies is to serve the globalist takeover. And the goal is gruesome. Remember when Bill Gates said that population reduction will be a product of the vaccines? All of these interventions are sterilizing mechanisms. They want us dead. But if they can't kill us outright, sterilizing us will do the job. 781, you're an absolute genius. Absolute genius. If you remember, at the height of the so-called pandemic, okay, the COVID pandemic, Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, by the way, he stepped down now. But Pope Francis dies, who, by the way, was very close with Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, but let that go. I don't want to rain on the media's parade, okay? So let that go. But almost on the day that Pope Francis died, Schwab now has stepped down. He's still going to play an active role behind the scenes, but he's no longer El Presidente of the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, you can run down the whole line, talked about how the greatest threat to humanity is quote unquote overpopulation, and that the goal is to reduce the population by over 7 billion people. That basically they want a world population of about 500 million. And so they said, we need wars, we need earthquakes, we need famines, we need starvation, we need vaccines, we need sterilization. So that is clearly part of the globalist end goal. Is they want to, it's basically population control. It's to reduce humanity to about 500 million with these globalists as the overlords, the new slaveholding or ruling class. and the most of the remaining population as essentially their laborers and their peasants, their serfs. And notice, power is always going one way, concentrated in the hands of an elite few. They keep taking more and more power away from us every single day. It's like a vampire draining blood out of our body. We've got to start taking the power back. Let's go right back to Joe in New Hampshire. Joe, you know, I got to say this. I've always felt that a lot of now of the radical left-wing agendas, the Marxist agenda, the DEI agenda, the critical race theory agenda, the radical LGBTQIA plus agenda, the whole kit and caboodle, transgenderism being the latest fad, that this truly is diabolical and demonic. And that the ultimate goal is to destroy and warp our children and to destroy and warp our country. And so when you talk about, Jeff, we need an exorcism. I'm thinking we may need an exorcism on the whole, you know, on the entire public education system. Because, Joe, I got to tell you, when I saw my beautiful little girl, honestly, running, you know, in the backyard, on all fours, hopping, I swear for a split second, it was like, is she possessed? I know this sounds crazy, but it seemed so bizarre. Like, what is my baby girl doing? And then when she came to me with a source of shame, like, did you see me, Daddy? Like, she knew she was doing something she shouldn't. So, anyway, and then, Joe, look, to have students at school, and I'm not talking one or two. You know, Ava just named me 5 of her friends who have, you know, these tails, these furry tails, and these artificial paws, whatever, at a costume store, whatever you buy. And 30 minutes at recess, and all they're doing is running around the back, not running, they're on all fours, hopping around in the schoolyard, barking and meowing, and being told, I identify as a dog or a cat, treat me like a dog or a cat. And they're biting other students. Literally biting them. I say, well, I'm a dog, and that's what dogs do. They bite. And the teachers are coddling them. They don't want to confront them. And the reason why they don't want to confront them is because they're petrified they're going to be sued for discrimination. Joe, this is evil. Joe, am I wrong?
You're absolutely right, and I agree with 781. By the way, something very interesting. I don't know. Have you ever heard of the Georgia Guidestones?
I've heard of them. Yes, Joe.
Yeah, they've been demolished now. Somebody blew them up. But everything you said about the globalists, it was right. It was written right on the Guidestones. About keeping world population at like 500 million, you know, underneath a billion. By the way, getting back to the true story of The Exorcist, yeah, that was based on a true story. There's a little boy who was playing with a Ouija board in his aunt, and that's how they believe the evil entered him. And there's actually a New York Post article about it, and his name was actually finally divulged rather recently. His name was Ronald Hunkler, and the name of the New York Post article, it was dated December 20th, 2021, and the title was "What Really Happened to Ronald Hunkler, Who Inspired The Exorcist." So I recommend people see that. And if you get a chance, you know, sometime, Jeff, maybe ask Father Chad Ripperger, Ripperger, to come on sometime, because I think these public school teachers, they know they're doing wrong. They're teaching satanic cult practices to our kids in public schools. They know what they're doing.
Joe, thank you very much for that call. I really appreciate it. Look, to be honest, I think a lot of them would love to tell these kids to knock this off, but they're afraid of losing their jobs and they're afraid of being sued. That's what I mean. We've got to get the heavy hand of these crazy woke bureaucrats off their neck. We've got to do it for the sake of our children and for the sake of our children's education, frankly, for the sake of their souls. 617-266-6868. By the way, Mike and I were just talking about this off air. I've seen The Exorcist now maybe 3 or 4 times. One of the scariest movies I've ever seen. I really, truly, I know at the time it was considered the scariest movie of all time. And it's considered a classic film. But it is, to this day, it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. Now, Mike doesn't think it's the scariest. Mike thinks it's either Insidious, which I'm not sure. I don't think I've seen, Mike. Okay, forgive me. Insidious. My bad, Mike. So Insidious, which he says he says he couldn't sleep practically. That's how much it scared him. Which I don't think I've ever seen. What was the other one, Mike? The Babadook? Is that the one? The Babadook. I don't think I've seen the Babadook either, but Mike says they're actually scarier than The Exorcist. Now, let me tell you a movie that I think is as scary as The Exorcist, maybe even scarier. The Exorcism of Emily Rose. It came out, maybe, don't quote me on this, maybe 15, 17, 18 years ago. It's got a really good cast. It's based on a true story about a girl who goes to college and becomes possessed. Okay, just another quick reminder. Big rally this Thursday, 2 days from today, noon at the steps of the State House right in front of the Boston Commons. It will start at 12 o'clock, lunchtime, obviously. I will be speaking. There will be a lot of other speakers. This is a very important rally, and I'm telling you, we can win this issue. We can win this issue, but we've got to get our voices heard. People need to show up, and God willing, people will. Just super, super quick. I'm getting a lot of people saying, Jeff, this population control agenda. It's everywhere. George Soros has openly come out and said that's our end goal. He's repeatedly said it on record. His son, who's now basically taken over the his entire financial political empire, has said that's our long-term goal, is population control. The entire climate change movement, you talk to all of these environmentalists, I mean, it's book after book, article after article. The problem is there are too many people on Earth. To the point now that Elon Musk has now addressed it head on. I don't want to get too carried away. I want to stay focused on the issue. But Elon now has come out and warned not just the United States, but the entire West, saying, trust me when I tell you this, we're going to be facing a population collapse in the next 20 years. It's the greatest threat that we face because people are no longer having children, especially younger people. The birth rate has completely, it's plummeted. We're way below replacement level. Why? Because they're being indoctrinated through the media, through Hollywood, through academia, throughout the universities, in schools in particular. Think about it. They're constantly being bombarded with the message, you should never have been born. That human beings are a scourge on the planet. We're the biggest carbon footprint. We shouldn't breathe. We shouldn't eat. We shouldn't consume electricity. We shouldn't drive a car. So humanity is going to kill the planet. So have less children. So this is not some, crazy conspiracy theory in the dark corners of the internet. The World Economic Forum issued literally their agenda for the next 15 to 20 years. And they said, we have to drop population, reduce the world's population by billions and billions and billions of people. How do we do that? Start sterilizing. Or also make life so expensive for the middle class that they can't afford to have children. So, and obviously you've had, the Jeff Bezos of the world, the Bill Gates of the world, the George Soros of the world have openly said, no. We need about 500 million people. That's it. We don't need more than that. Everything else is quote unquote excess population. Get rid of it. Somehow, some way. So just so that you understand, that's the end goal. That's why it's all tied to Big Pharma. It's tied to the globalists and why they want to say they control our bodies and the bodies of our children. We're their property. Now, if they can control what they can put into your children and that they could sterilize your children and that they could vaccinate your children against your will, well, pretty soon they're going to be able to control how many children you can have. They'll be able to control every aspect of your life and your children's life. Because what they're telling you is it's no longer your child. It's their child. That children belong to the government and to the state, not to the parents. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Dan in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
You're right over target, Jeff. These are Marxist, socialist, communist Democrats, and they're Satanists, okay? And you're right over the target with the names, okay? They're all tied to Act Blue, okay? George Soros, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, the Pritzker family, Klaus Schwab, Reid Hoffman, okay? And then you got the people, also Jeff Bezos, right? And then you got Melinda Gates, okay? And Lauren Powell Jobs, who owns the Atlantic, Disney, right? And then who's running it? I talked about Norm Eisen the other day, okay? Who openly in February said, bragging about going to slap over 100 lawsuits on President Trump, okay? In February, okay? You get Emily Kirby, Kristen Ford, Allegra Chapman, and you got Neera Tandem, who controls the Flower Group, okay? She's a big key player in this, okay? And when you're talking about the Flower Group, now you're talking about Mayor Wu, okay, and Deval Patrick. They both came from there. They're from the old Chicago connection, right, Jeff? Okay, so this is what's going on, and we have to expose it. These people keep saying we're a democracy, right? And even some of these uniparty traders, they say we're a democracy. Where in the U.S. Constitution does it mention a democracy or a Democrat? It doesn't exist. Not in the Pledge of Allegiance of the United States or the Bill of Rights. But what you will find is the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. Okay? So that being said, Jeff, you're absolutely right about Fox News. That scumbag Sean Hannity, he runs a scripted show. Every time I try to call into that show, they want to record your phone call, Jeff. They record your call, and then they alter it. They delete whatever they don't want to get out, okay? And he keeps rolling out these traders, these guys that he calls his good friends, Karl Rove, Ari Fleischer, right? Mark Meadows, right? These guys that stabbed Trump, Mike Pence, right? Okay? And Mark Meadows is tied to the Freedom Caucus. He was a plant for the Bushes and the Cheneys and a mole for Karl Rove and Ari Fleischer. That's what he was doing. And this guy, Mark Meadows, is tied to global real estate, which is selling land to China. Okay?
Well, so Dan, I mean, look, honestly, again, dynamite information. And you said it, China. You mention all of these names, all of these people, and everything you say is completely true, 1,000% true. All roads ultimately lead to China. And you look at all these wealthy globalists, these what billionaires, multi-billionaires, how they control the media, and how everything in the end goes to communist China. And that is their model for the world. You mentioned Mark Zuckerberg, you mentioned George Soros, you mentioned Melinda Gates, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos. You can run down the whole line. They believe that China is the new Rome of the Roman Empire, that America's days are done, that we're finished, that we cannot compete with the country that's 1.4 billion people. So just take their 0.4 That's 400 million. So the 0.4 is a higher population than that of the United States. And then add 1 billion to that. So they see this as potentially the biggest market in the world where they can make really unimaginable amounts of money. And they love the ideology of the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party is not your father or grandfather's communist. If you bend the knee to the regime, they'll let you keep most of your money. They're not going to confiscate your money. And you help them maintain their power, they will help you maintain your power. You know, as one of my professors taught me, this was in the 90s, and he said, you know, people keep calling China communist. It really is a fascist regime. I mean, it's like red fascism. It may have a communist exterior. They're still called a communist party. But they're hyper-nationalistic, very militaristic, very totalitarian, and they're in bed with very powerful oligarchs. They're basically now a corporatist state, a one-party corporatist state. That's Mussolini. That's fascism. And they're militarily extremely aggressive. And they're bent on global domination. So, you know, to me, there's no question that China is our number one foe, our number one adversary. And the globalists are traitors. They have put their lot in with the communist Chinese because they believe ultimately they're joining the winning side. So everything goes back to China. And if you look at our politicians, seriously, who isn't bought and paid for by communist China? Karl Rove, he's in bed with the Chi-Coms. The Bushes, they're in bed with the Chi-Coms. Mitch McConnell, he's in bed with the Chi-Coms, or him and his wife. Mitt Romney, he's in bed with the Chi-Coms. Pelosi, she's in bed with the Chi-Coms. The Bidens, they're in bed with the Chi-Coms. The Obamas, they're in bed with the Chi-Coms. The Clintons, they're in bed with the Chi-Coms. So the thing about Trump, you have to keep remembering this. Why Trump is a unique threat to the entire regime and establishment is because he is not bought and paid for. The Chinese don't own him. Just like, to be brutally honest with you, they don't own this show. They don't own me, and they don't own you. And that's why they're extremely afraid of us. By the way, the big pharma companies, the big pharmas, they've made their bed in China. So so all of these vaccines and these drugs, they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Where do you think most of them are made? They're made in China. That's why they're trying to destroy Trump's tariffs. They don't want to reshore the supply chain here. So in terms of the larger picture, that's what's going on at the more state, local level. They want your children. They want my children. They want the China model. In China, they control everything they put into their bodies. They tell them how many vaccines, how often. They tell them, we sterilize, we don't sterilize. 1 child, 2 child, 3 children, we decide. After 1 child, now they've kind of abandoned that a little bit, but for decades, it was like, you want a second child? You can't. You have 1 child, after that, you have to have an abortion. We will force you to have an abortion. And if you don't want to have an abortion, we'll sterilize you. And there's nothing you can do about it. So censorship, that's all the Chinese model. Everything they did during COVID, everything they borrowed from communist China. The lockdowns from communist China. The censorship from communist China. The mask mandates, communist China. The vaccine mandates, communist China. So you have to understand that communist China has taken over the mantle from the Soviet Union. And they're more powerful than the Soviets ever were. Frankly, they're smarter than the Soviets ever were. They're economically much more dynamic and wealthy than the Soviets ever were. I'm not trying to scare people. Look, there's many problems with communist China. The regime is brittle. There are many divisions in China. They have serious problems. But what I'm just trying to say is these guys aren't fooling around. Xi Jinping is a very serious man. The Communist Chinese Party leadership, they are bribing and buying influence, not just in Washington, not just the media. They're buying influence state by state, state capital by state capital. And ultimately, the globalists want our children. We can't give them our children. If they take our children, they take away our families. They take away our families, they take away our future. That's the stake. That's what we're fighting. So, I looked at all these conservatives after the Soviet Union collapsed, and like, we won the Cold War. I'm like, what do you guys, sober up and get out of the bar? The Cold War's not over. You still got communist China. What's the matter with you people? And now we're learning it the hard way. Now, I think we will win, but we can only win if we realize the threat, wake up, and confront it. 617-266-6868. I want to throw another log on the fire. Okay, just a very quick log on the fire. Because I think it makes an absolutely fascinating point. So, what are we talking about? All of these laws that are now being passed in states, California, New York, Connecticut, Maine, Minnesota, many places, and now what they're trying to push here in Massachusetts, which is ending religious exemptions for school-mandated vaccinations. And your child, let's say you don't want your child to be vaccinated for whatever reason, your child is either being barred in these states or in Massachusetts, if these bills pass, will be barred, prevented from going to daycare or kindergarten, elementary, middle, high school, public or private, it doesn't matter. I want to read this because I have to tell you, I've been thinking about this now for the last couple weeks. Why do parents have to rely on a religious exemption if they don't want to vaccinate their children? Like, why? Why? Why can't you just say on conscience grounds, I'm sorry. I disagree. I don't think it's in the best interest of my child. Why do you have to claim or say it's religious reasons or based on religious beliefs when it may not be religious beliefs or it has nothing to do with religion? Or it's just you as a parent or parents saying, no, we're just exercising our parental authority and we think we've done research, we've looked into vaccines, and we don't think it's the right thing for our child. Why can't we just say that? I want to read this text. 603 from New Hampshire. Jeff, one point about this that I find incredibly disturbing and indeed infuriating is the fact that citizens are having to rely solely on religious exemptions to avoid taking any of these jabs. And this is coming from a Christian, Jeff. Don't get me wrong. I think there should be religious exemptions for anything that would violate one's faith. But whatever happened to being a conscientious objector? Are we not allowed to object in the land of the free? There are plenty of people out there who aren't necessarily religious, but who refuse to put these big pharma chemical cocktails in their bodies and the bodies of their children because they simply don't trust the science behind them. And they feel that these mandates are coming from a corrupt government who is working in collusion with corrupt big pharma that is using corrupted studies. A good majority of these people, and this is very true, have done exhaustive homework into the subject and have sought out qualified views that aren't corrupted by big pharma money and have found that many of them counter the official narrative. It's really as simple as that. They just don't trust what is being put forth as, quote unquote, the science. I saw this in particular with the COVID jab, okay, the experimental mRNA technology. Many of the people who didn't want it injected into them or into their children honestly, were some of the best informed people I've ever met in my life. I mean, they didn't just read Robert F. Kennedy's book. They didn't just read Alex Berenson's. By the way, Berenson's book was phenomenal. Okay, former New York Times bestseller. They didn't just read scientist after scientist, researcher after researcher. I mean, the way they marshaled all of the evidence and the facts. In other words, many of them, I'm not sure they're even religious, or if they are, they're vaguely religious. They may not go to a particular church or a denomination or go every Sunday. So again, why do they have to use a religious exemption? I'm with 603 all the way. If you say, no, look, I'm a dutiful, well-read, well-researched, well-informed citizen, and I don't like these vaccines for whatever reason. I don't want them in my body, and I certainly don't want them in the body of our children, in the bodies of our children. What's wrong with that? Like, I agree. Why not be what's wrong with being a conscientious objector? So, to me, a religious exemption is, again, I like to be very honest and upfront. I don't like to make things up. If I'm opposing something on genuinely religious grounds, which is your right, then let it be truly on religious grounds. The problem now is, and I'm not blaming people who do this, but they figure if I don't apply for religious exemption, they're going to force me to put something in my body or in the bodies of my children that I don't want. Well, what happened? I thought we were a free country. Whatever happened to my body, my choice? Or in this case, my children's bodies, the parents' choice. Agree, disagree? Verna in Arlington. Thanks for holding, Verna, and welcome.
Hi there, Jeff.
Hi,
thank you very much. Blessings to you all.
Thank you.
I really want to stress this one. I want to thank Joe for his call a little while ago to bring in the spiritual aspect here, because we really do need this understanding, the evil versus the good. When my children were young, I did not send them to public school. I knew from my own experience in public school that it was not a trustworthy, reliable atmosphere. This is a Luciferian, satanic agenda that's going on, the whole thing. Everybody that, whatever they're saying this morning, this is a completely satanic Luciferian agenda to take over the world, and that's basically what's going on to just bring evil. I also grew up in basically a satanic-oriented family. They played the Ouija board with me. I was a very good conductor of the demon spirits on the Ouija board. Let people know that this is all evil out there. All of that stuff is evil. And we need to be very cognizant of it. I'm grateful for that priest, wherever it was that Joe spoke about, that people need to...
Verna, can you... Mike, again, boy, you'll love that button, huh, Mike? Okay, let's go right back to Verna in Arlington. Verna, you're saying there's clearly a spiritual dimension, a moral dimension to what these globalists are trying to do to us. It's good versus evil. Please pick up where you left off.
I want to thank you for actually having a forum whereby people can call in and expose this stuff. There, we need to expose the spiritual. This is satanic. This is Luciferian. It's their agenda. The globalism, the Illuminati, all of that, all of this stuff is part of the evil agenda to take over the world and to just bring evil in. And basically that is what my point is. And please go and expound on this, because this is extremely crucially important.
Well, Verna, as you were talking, I'll just, again, let me be brutally honest with you, like I'm in the confessional. When I was a PhD student back at the Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, one of my professors was a brilliant man. He's one of the most respected Russian Soviet historians alive. He's still alive, although I think he's semi-retired now. His name is Professor Stephen Miner, and he's written 3 books, all of them on Stalin. He is one of the world's leading experts on Stalin, on the Soviet Union, and on communism. Long story short, he had me read Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, which I think is one of the greatest books, not just an anti-communist book, but one of the greatest books ever written, period, full stop. And so we were in a graduate class, and there was maybe 10 of us along with him. And so he asked me to talk about the book, and I went on for about 20 minutes. I read it cover to cover. I mean, I loved it. And he asked me this question, and this goes directly to what you're saying now. He said, in the end, what is Solzhenitsyn saying about Marxism, communism, and socialism? Here's one of the most brilliant men who has ever walked the face of the earth. One of the most brilliant thinkers, writers, philosophers. He's a literary intellectual giant. And I said, well, what he's really saying, and I go, this is what's so powerful about the book, is he paints communism like a social and moral and spiritual cancer that just devours and infects and destroys everything in its path. And Professor Miner, Dr. Miner as I called him, Dr. Miner cut me off. And he said, no, Jeff, you're close but no cigar. He goes, I want you to look at the book again. What Solzhenitsyn is really saying is that communism is satanic. That it's Satanism. What Solzhenitsyn is saying is that communism is anti-God, it is anti-life, it is anti-freedom, it is anti-human. And that it is the greatest heresy, great as in consequential, not great as in positive. It is a heresy, the biggest heresy ever. And that in many ways, it is the devil's ideology. And so I remember I said, ooh, and I said, that was very powerful. And I remember I went back and I reread it and I said, my God, he's right. Cancer is too much of a medical term, a scientific term, a surgical term. It's close, it's accurate, but not on target. What Solzhenitsyn was saying is that beyond its economic failure, beyond its political failure, beyond its cultural failure, it's ultimately a spiritual and moral malaise. It's the devil. If the devil came up with an ideology, it would be Marxism and communism. It wants to destroy the family. It wants to destroy the individual. It wants to destroy nations and countries. It wants to destroy God itself. Ultimately, it says the state is God. The state knows no boundaries. Globalism, transnationalism. The state supersedes the family. The state is the family. It's the most wicked, evil thing ever invented. And it's no accident that communism has led to the greatest mass murder and genocide in the history of the world. And by the way, let's say you include National Socialism as communism or not, okay? Because there's a debate. Is Nazism really a form of socialism or is it not? Just for the sake, I think it is. I think it clearly is. But just for the sake of argument, say you say, no, Jeff, Nazism is different from communism and Marxism. Okay, fine. Let me just concede for the sake of argument. Still, and for all of Hitler's, grotesque, unspeakable crimes, communism is responsible at a minimum for over 100 million murdered human beings. As Solzhenitsyn, in one of his most powerful paragraphs said, just the crimes of Stalin, we're not talking the crimes of Lenin, we're not talking the crimes of Mao or Castro, or you can run down all the communist dictators in the world, just that of Stalin alone. You could literally stack the bodies and they would reach all the way to the moon. Think of that, a stack of bodies. It's not a mountain. It literally goes into the clouds and into outer space. That's how many people communism has murdered. I'll never forget that. And when I read the Gulag Archipelago, if I can be brutally honest with everybody, again, like I'm in the confessional, I'm confessing a lot today. I don't know if it's the death of Pope Francis. I don't know if it's Easter Sunday. I don't know what it is. But for some reason, I'm confessing a lot today. I cried. It's the only time I've ever read a book where I cried. When I read the Gulag Archipelago, first of all, I couldn't put it down. I read it cover to cover. I read all night. I started reading in the evening, and I just kept reading and reading. I could not stop. And the reason why I could not stop was because I saw my grandfather in that book. My grandfather was in a gulag, which is a Russian word for slave labor camp, concentration camp, but they work you to death. That was my grandfather's story. He told my grandfather's story in that book. My grandfather was a brilliant man, a beautiful man, a decent man, a very humane man. But, you know, he wasn't an educated man. I'm not saying this to insult him. I'm just telling you he was a peasant. I think had a 6th or 8th grade education. He was a farmer, worked very hard. So he would tell me stories, and he would tell me what he suffered and what he endured. But Solzhenitsyn, with his eloquence, with his literary insight, with his power, his literary writing power, his philosophical genius, captured what my grandfather said and then put it on a level that is almost, to me, people say it's almost as close to God as you can get. It's what's called transcendental. It's a book that will last forever. Very few books. Shakespeare, there are very few writers that they write something of such truth and power and beauty and insight that it lives on centuries and centuries and centuries. That's Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. Long story short, I cried. Okay, I know I keep saying this over and over and over again, but it's true. I don't know what else to tell you. Okay? I'm sorry. It's the truth. Best audience in the business. Listen now to this. This is what Bill messaged me on Messenger, and he's not, as I like to say, 100%, but 1,000% correct. Jeff, you are missing a huge point. They are going to make all the vaccines mRNA, i.e. like the COVID jab. That's why they want them all mandated. Enough of us refuse the COVID jab, so they want to get it in us any way they can. Bill, you're a genius. I'm telling you, if you measure your IQ, I guarantee you're above 140 minimum. That's exactly you want to talk about a pharmaceutical master plan? That's the pharmaceutical master plan. mRNA technology is the future for Big Pharma. The COVID jab was a big step for them towards that future. And they want to make as many vaccines mRNA technology compliant as possible. That's why they want to mandate them and then have it almost open-ended to what vaccines they can keep adding year after year after year. They want to force us all to take mRNA technology. That's exactly the long-term game plan. 617-26. That's why no. The answer has to be no. That's it. Our children, not yours. Our body, our choice. Period. Full stop. 617-266-6868. Again, just a very quick reminder. Big rally. I need all of you to show up, Kuhner Country. After tomorrow, on Thursday, just 2 days from today, noon, steps of the State House in front of the Boston Commons. The rally is sponsored by American Made Action. I will be emceeing it, and of course, I will be speaking. Let's show Massachusetts and these lawmakers and the Democrats. Here is our red line. You cross it at your peril. Dan in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Thanks for taking the call, Jeff. I'm going to tie in a lot of what I've heard today from other callers. You know what the billionaires are going for? It's not the money. What they're going for is your mind. They're going for the control of your mind. And what I basically mean by that is that you saw how they treated us during COVID. You couldn't get a haircut. You couldn't go to the beach. But everything else is open. The liquor stores, the pot stores, You notice how they shut down religion. What I'm talking about is manipulation. It's demonic, it's Satanism, and it's basically Antichrist. And all of these people and all of this technology, what do? They want to mine your information. They want to sell your information. They want to know as much as they can possibly know about you, so that way they can be one step ahead of you in what you buy and what you like. Jeff, this is a very, very serious thing that you struck upon today, because it's good versus evil. And I'm going to tell you right now, notice all of these, when they say Trump derangement syndrome, that's mind manipulation. Do you mean to tell me that millions of people who have never met Trump hate him with such a vengeance, and the fact that they want to kill him, that they've actually, how do they get to that point? They listen to lies. They listen to confusion. They listen to basically a narrative that's being pushed down our throats by the powers to be. What it comes down to, if they own the mind, they own the individual. You're not a free thinker anymore. You're thinking the way that they want you to think. And that's what is going on. That's what all the treasure trove is that they're going for, is mind control, because if you're not in control of your mind, they are. And they can manipulate you. And that's what you're seeing. Trump derangement syndrome, Black Lives Matter, that's their stormtroops, Antifa, all of that. These are people that have basically, their mind has been corrupted through lies and confusion. And this is why we can't understand how these people think like that, because, who thinks devilish? Who thinks satanic? All of these, what I call over-the-top type of things. But because of technology, they have wormed themselves so deeply into your life that they know more about you than you think you know, than you know. And they sell that information. Look at the news. I mean, my God, you don't think that for the last 10 years that we haven't been manipulated, that this country's been divided right in two because of what we hear and what we see? There's no free thinking. And that's what they want to steal from us, because if they own your brain, they own your mind, they own you.
Bingo. Dan, I couldn't have said it better myself. And you're right. It's nonstop brainwashing and indoctrination. It's nonstop manipulation. And, you look at, like I told you, there's these people going around keying Tesla cars and throwing bricks into Teslas or spraying Nazi swastikas. And when they're being arrested by the police, all they say is, when I see Tesla, I see Elon. When I see Elon, I see Hitler. You're crazy. You're crazy. I'm telling you, you're crazy. If Elon Musk is Adolf Hitler, you belong in a padded cell. But that's what the media has succeeded in doing. It's really, I'm telling you, it's frightening how ignorant people are. I'm sorry, but how stupid so many people are, and how they can be so easily manipulated. That's, to me, that's the scary part. It's like they can just turn it on and off. It's like what George Orwell described in 1984, really. We're at war with Oceania? No, we're at peace with Oceania. Like, you can direct them any way you want. It's chilling. It truly is. Dan, thank you very much for that call. Kim in Brighton. Thanks for holding, Kim, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure, Kim.
This has been a great show, and the callers have been great, and I agree with Kara and Dan, who just got off the line, and Kara, who said that a lot of us are worn out from fighting and that the left never stops. COVID, of course, was all about compliance, and it's really good that you've brought this up, because probably a lot of people have no clue this is going on. And the other really sad thing, probably because people aren't really free thinkers, is that they don't seem to have any curiosity at all. Like, for example, why is the government so intent on injecting the population? And I use the word inject rather than vaccines because we know that they're not vaccines. Why do you inject healthy people? Why? Why does a child by the age of 18 why does that child have 72 doses of vaccines? And I think with everything going on, COVID-19, you can look at that as COV, Certificate of Vaccination, 19AI, maybe. I don't know. 1 is A, 9 is I. Anyway, again, it was all about compliance. And RFK Jr. is doing a lot of good, and I think this is being fast-tracked to get it in before he can do any damage to pharma. But you can always look up childrenshealthdefense.org, and he really digs down into that measles story. The child, as to my understanding, died.
Kim, can you hang on, Kim? I'm up against a hard break. Okay, let's go right back to Kim in Brighton. Kim, you were on a roll until, of course, Mike liked to get a little trigger happy with the button. So, all right, Kim, you were saying 72 doses of vaccines. That's incredible. By the time they hit 18 years old, Big Pharma is licking their chops. They want to make a ton of money. They know RFK Jr. is getting himself ready. He's starting to get settled in. So they want to pass these bills while they can before RFK starts to drop the hammer. Please, Kim, pick up where you left off.
And one of the other issues is that we've basically normalized sickness. We have the highest health care cost per person and one of the worst outcomes in the entire industrialized world. And RFK Jr. says when Fauci took office, there were maybe 10 or 11% people of the population had chronic illness, and it's ballooned to well over 50, maybe 60%. And we've just also normalized this degradation of health, and people don't ask questions. They run to the doctor. They take the blood pressure pills. Does the doctor ever have any kind of curiosity as to why this condition is going on? Maybe it's a food allergy. People eat conventional food. There's glyphosate in the wheat, Roundup weed killer. And a lot of things could cause it, but then they take the blood pressure pills, and if you do that long enough, you need the arthritis pills because of the acidic condition, and cholesterol drugs, and the brain requires, it's 60% fat. You need healthy fat, and the statins reduce the fat, and so that's what causes dementia and Alzheimer's later. So everything has an outcome, and unfortunately, I think the biggest problem is compliance, and people just say, okay, like you get on a plane and they take your picture and it becomes normalized, and that's what the biggest problem is. The other problem, I think it was Kara who said, people are tired. The price of everything, you just get exhausted after a while from fighting. And I think that's where we're at, but it is absolutely critical that people wake up. And they also don't seem to see my body, my choice. Doesn't that have anything to do with what gets injected into a person? You're basically having a stranger inject something into your body. And the issue has never really been about vaccines. It's the ingredients. Why do they have aluminum and formaldehyde and mercury in vaccines, and they inject them into people's bodies? And that's absolutely crazy. There's the DNA from animals. You have bovine, fetal bovine, and that's an ingredient in a vaccine, DNA from dead animals injected into humans. MRC-5 is from an aborted fetus, so you're injecting the DNA from a dead person. And people have to understand this is what's going on. And why inject healthy people? We know why. Dan said it. Other callers said it. We know what this is all about.
Kim, I'm just curious. Do you think if the people of, I'm just using Massachusetts as an example, but they've already passed these laws in California and in Maine and in Connecticut and in New York and in Minnesota, and it goes on and on. Do you think if people in other blue states, or now it's pending here in Massachusetts, if the people in Massachusetts were aware of what these communist Democrats were really planning to do regarding their children, their bodies, their future, would we see a political uprising?
I fear that a lot of people couldn't believe it. It sounds crazy. It's some of the things I just said, that they have bovine fetal tissue and in vaccines. It makes me sound crazy. And so that's what they bank on. But what someone has to do is to keep talking about the ingredients and ask why aluminum's there. I understand it's an adjuvant. That's what they say. It's an adjuvant for the immune system. Well, couldn't you find something that's not so toxic? And then you look at the geoengineering, they're spraying aluminum in the skies. That's not a conspiracy theory. What happens when a body collects lots of aluminum? Alzheimer's and dementia. So you have to look at the bigger picture. You're right. But if you start talking about that, people think it's crazy. Maybe we can just start with the vaccines. Why do you need to inject people with formaldehyde?
Kim, I always learn when you call. Thank you so much for that call, Kim. And hopefully I'll see you on Thursday at the rally. Candace in Sutton. Thanks for holding, Candace, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Candace.
So I'm probably going to fire hose you with a whole bunch of information, and I apologize. But first thing, there's actually 5 bills this session. 2 of them are to remove the religious exemption. 1 of them is the Community Immunity Act, and the other 2 is an act relative to abortion care. The Community Immunity Act and an act relative to abortion care both allow minors to consent to vaccination without parental consent or knowledge. I've seen posts going around saying age 5 to 7. There is no age guidelines in this bill at all. It's not 5 to 17 at all. And there's no...
Candace, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. So you're saying it could, what, it's 0 to 17? Is that it? In other words, no limits whatsoever?
There are no limits established whatsoever, nor are there any intellectual capacity guidelines. So, for example, my son has developmental disabilities. He could consent to, preventative care without my consent or knowledge, without being able to communicate effectively about his prior adverse events. The abortion bill is the one that allows for the sterilization piece. It's not the Community Immunity Act. And then another part that I want to mention is that Massachusetts does have already in the law for, under-immunized individuals an exclusion protocol. So, and many legislators don't know this. So if there was an outbreak or if there was an emergency, they would be excluded from school, not necessarily every single time, but if it warranted, they would be excluded from school. And that protocol is already in place. The other part is that the individuals that are using the religious exemption, utilizing one, is only about 1.3% of the population. And
Mike, you just cut her off in mid-sentence like this, Mike? Mike, how about, 30 seconds, 20 seconds? Give me a countdown, Mike? No? All right. Now he tells me 10 seconds. Candace, we're going to talk about this a lot more. Great information. I got to go. Bye-bye.